We begin today at the Mishnah on Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Beis. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, Omru Loi, there are people that said to a husband, Nichtov get lishtecha, should we write a get for your wife? Vamalehen, he tells them, Ksuva, yeah, go ahead and write a get. So that's all he said. So, write. Now, Omru l'Seifer, so these people went and they told the Seifer to write a get, v'kosav, and the Seifer wrote a get. Ule'edim, and then they went and told Edim that you should sign this get, v'chosmu, and they signed the get. So everything seems to be totally kosher. Now, says the Mishnah, Ava pi shekasvu v'chosmu, it was written, it was signed, and then v'nasnuhu loy, they brought the get, they gave it back to the husband. And v'chosav v'nasnila, the husband went and gave it to his wife. Hariya get bottle. This get is entirely bottle. Because when the husband said to write the get, he was telling them. He told them to write the get. And then they didn't go and do what he said. They did something else. They went and gave it to the Sefer to write and to the Eidim to sign. So therefore this get is bottle. When is the get going to be kosher if it was done this way, if the Sefer wrote it? If the husband himself told directly the Sefer that you should write the get, and he told the Eidim that signed this get that you should sign the get. So now from what it says here in the Mishnah, it seems like that this is the only way possible, that the husband has to say directly to the Sefer, you write this get, and to the Eidim, you sign this get. Only then will this get be kosher that the Sefer wrote. So here, the Gemara is going to bring up that this is not so pashut. We had already a discussion about this before, and it was on Daf Samach Vav, where there was a Mishnah there that began discussing this subject. When the husband commands to write a get, to give a get, and there, the Mishnah actually brought a machlekes about this. So just to bekitzer, to review what we learned over there, the Mishnah there said, number one, it depends if he's talking to two people or three people. When you talk to two people, so then they're not a bezdin. They're just two people. When you talk to three people, so then they're a bezdin. That's one thing the Gemara discussed before. Another thing the Gemara discussed before, it also depends what language the husband used when he told them to write this get. Did he say write? So then that sounds like he's telling them, I want you, Dafka, to write it. He doesn't want anyone else to write it. He's embarrassed about this writing of the get. He wants them to write it. Or he said tnu. He said to them, give the get. It's another scenario. So if he says give the get, so then maybe they can ask someone else to write the get. Okay, so let's see here. The Gemara is going to spell out a few details about this that we already learned before, and in the Mishnah here, there seems to be a contradiction. Says the Gemara, what do we understand from the beginning of the Mishnah? The reason why the get is bottle is because the loy omatnu. What was the exact case of the Mishnah? The husband said to these people, you write the get. What's if the husband would not say you write the get? If the husband would just say give the get. So then it would be okay. Ha'amatnu naisnin. If they would say give the get, then it would be fine if they ask the Sefer to go ahead and write the get. Now, Mani, whose opinion is this? Says the Gemara Rab Meir. This is Rab Meir's opinion. The Alma, Rab Meir says, and like I said, we had this before in Daf Samach Vav, that Mili Mimsaron l'Shliyach. When a husband goes and tells Shluchim, I want you to give a get, even if they go and give this over to someone else, and they give it someone else to write the get, still, the get is okay. You can give over that shlichus. Basically, the husband was telling them you should write and give the get. They can give this over to someone else. That's what it comes out from the ratio of the Mishnah. The only reason why it doesn't work is because the husband said ksuva. If he would have said tnu, it would work. Okay, now Rashi adds over here, and we'll see this from the continuation of the Gemara right over here, that even this that Rab Meir says, that if you say tnu, they can give it over to someone else, that's only if it was said to three people, which are a bezdin. If he didn't say it to three people which are a bezdin, so then, even though Rab Meir says that you could give over a shlichus to someone else, but if he's telling the tnu to two people, he's being makpid. He wants them to take care of it. It's like he's telling them, you write it and you give it, even though he didn't spell out ksuvu. The diuk over here is, in a case where it's three people, so then, if you would say tnu, then they could give it over to someone else, because it's a bezdin, so once he's speaking to a bezdin this way, he's not makbid if they give it over to someone else. That's what it comes out from the beginning of the Mishnah. Now, aim is safe, but then what does it say in the next part of the Mishnah? That the only way the Sefer could write the get is if he tells the Sefer directly, you write the get and you sign the get. Now, Rabbi Yosi, this sounds like Rabbi Yosi's opinion. What's Rabbi Yosi's opinion? That once you're giving over something to someone, and that includes even if you're giving it over to three, which have a koyach of a bezdin, but you're telling them to write it, or whether you say kisvu, whether you say tnu, it doesn't matter what you say, and it doesn't matter who you say it to, even if you're saying it to three, which is a bezdin, they can't give it over to anyone else. Rabbi Yosi holds they must go ahead and write the get. And that's what it sounds like in the Sefer of the Mishnah. The Sefer of the Mishnah says the Sefer can write the get only if the husband told him directly. So if so, comes out the Reisha Rab Meir, the Sefer Rab Yosi. The Reisha of the Mishnah is following Rab Meir's opinion, and the Sefer is following Rab Yosi's opinion. So the first answer the Gemara says is you're right. That's how we have to learn our Mishnah. Reisha Rab Meir, the Sefer Rab Yosi. The Reisha is Rab Meir and the Sefer Rab Yosi. That's the case here. Rabbi Omar, Rabbi says no, Kula Rab Meiri. We could say that the entire Mishnah here is Rab Meir. What's the case over here of the Mishnah? Deloi Omar Tanu, that he did not say Tanu. In other words, the Gemara understands right now that the Reish of the Mishnah is saying that he said Ksuvu, that he told them write the get, and therefore they can't give it over to someone else. And then in the Sefer of the Mishnah, it's coming to tell you regarding this case when he says write the get, that only if he tells the Sefer directly to write the get will it be kosher. But if you say tnu, so then it would taka be good. Then Rab Meir holds it would taka be good. But the Mishnah over here doesn't even spell that out. That's already understood from the diuk of the Reisha. That's how Tosfos over here explains what the Gemara is trying to say. We already know from the diuk of the Reisha that if you say tnu, that they could give it over to someone else. So therefore, that the Mishnah is not saying befeirish anything about. It's just talking about the case where he said ksuvu, and they want to give it over to someone else. And so in such a case, the Mishnah in the Sefer is saying that only if you say ksuvu directly to the Sefer, could they write the get. But the Gemara asks on this, but ihachi, this is not a good answer, because if that's the case, so in the Sefer, why is the Sefer saying that the only option is if you told the Sefer directly to write the get, then the get is going to be good if he writes it? The Mishnah should have made this point and said, no, you don't have to speak directly to the Sefer. As long as he told three people, give the get, they can give it over to someone else. That's what the Mishnah should have said. Answers the Gemara, Elo hocha b'mayaskinon. What our Mishnah is speaking about is the Oloi Omar lebeit lasa. That over here he's not speaking to three people. Since, like I said before, the whole chiddush of Rab Meir, if you say tunu, that they can give it over to write to someone else, that's only if it's three people. If it's not three people, if it's not a bezdin, then we know that the husband is makbid, he wants them to write it, even if he didn't spell out the word ksuv, even if he only said tunu. So over here, when the Mishnah says that you must say it directly to the Sefer, is because he wasn't speaking to three people. Fragt the Gemara, if that's the case, so then in the Sefer, instead of saying that he must tell the Sefer directly, you write it, the Mishnah should have said that it said in the Reisha, that if you tell them to write it, they can't give it over to anyone else, is because they weren't three. But if there are three people that the husband is speaking to, then they could give it over to someone else to write. They could give it over to a Sefer to write. Why is in the Sefer saying that you must tell the Sefer directly to write the get? Okay, so this doesn't work. To say that the entire Mishnah is Rab Meir doesn't work. Ella says, so the Gemara now suggests, Kula Rab Yosi. Maybe we could say that the entire Mishnah here is Rab Yosi, that holds that you can't give over a husband that told Eidim, Shluchim, even a Bezdin, they can't give it over to anyone else. That's our Mishnah. Now, if so, Hakara Mishnah, how is it mashma here from the Mishnah that there is a possibility to give it over to someone else? Because in the Reisha of the Mishnah it says only if they say Ksuvu, only if the husband that is said ksuva, then you can't give it over. Answer is what you have to learn out from the Mishnah is the emes is even according to Rabbi Yosi there is a certain exception. If you remember, we learned about this before on Daf Samach Vav. This whole halacha that Rabbi Yosi holds that if the husband appoints shluchim to write a get, to give a get, they can't give it over to someone else. That's if he appoints them to do it. But if he tells them beferish, I want you to command someone else to write the get, you tell someone else to write the get, since that's what the whole shlichus is about, then they could go and appoint someone else to give it over. So therefore over here, the diuk that you're supposed to say from the ratio of our Mishnah is, how was the Gemara Medayik before? The Gemara was Medayik before, it said in the ratio of the Mishnah, Kesuvu, then they can't tell a Sefer to write it. So the Gemara before was Medayik, but if you say Tunu, then they could give it over to a Sefer. Now, the Gemara is saying is, that's not the diuk of the ratio of the Mishnah. Rather, the diuk of the ratio of the Mishnah is that only if the husband told these people write the get, then they can't give it over to someone else. But if the husband is telling them, Imru, you go tell someone else to write the get, then they could give it over to someone else. That's the diuk from the ratio of the Mishnah. Okay, now from the Sefer of the Mishnah, we already understand that Tnu is not good. Because the Sefer of the Mishnah says, Ad sheyema l'sefer ksayv. So that means and you can't, if you told them Tnu, then they won't be able to tell the Sefer. But on the other hand, though, from the ratio of the Mishnah, the diuk is supposed to be that if he told these shluchim, Imru, tell someone else, then they could give it over to someone else. So therefore the Mishnah could work according to Rabbi Yossi. But the Gemara asks him this. Okay, 1 second, where am I over here? If that's the diuk from the ratio of the Mishnah, so then Achiyoma Imru Mibayale. So then in the Sefer, the Mishnah should have said that. Why is the Mishnah saying that the Sefer could only write the get if the husband spoke to the Sefer directly? The Sefer of the Mishnah should have said that as long as the Sefer told the Shluchim, tell the Sefer to write the get, that's good. Another question besides this, and here the Gemara will repeat a piece that we already learned before in Daf Samach Vav. Is this true that there's this exception according to Rabbi Yossi? That if the husband tells the Shluchim, tell someone else, then they could go and give that over to someone else? And the husband doesn't have to directly tell that person to write the get? But if there is this exception, we have the following problem. Tanam, we learned later in a Mishnah, Ksav Sefer ve'eid kosher. You have a get which the Sefer wrote, and there's one aid that signed on it, the get is kosher. Rabbi Yirmiyah explained, what does that Mishnah mean? Chsam Sefer Shaninu. That Mishnah means that the Sefer actually signed the get. So there's two signatures, one from the Sefer and one from the aid. Rav Chisda explains that Mishnah, Masnisin Mani, Rabbi Yossi, that Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, the Oma Mili Lemimsaran L'Shliach. That words cannot be given over to a Shliach, which again means that whoever is writing the get had to have heard so from the husband himself. You can't give over a command to write a get or a Shlichus to write a get to anyone else. Now, why is Rabbi Yossi saying this? Because over here, you see a get that was signed by the Sefer. There's a very big chashash over here. What's the chashash? That the Sefer was told to write the get, and then he didn't only write it, he went on and signed it as well. He wasn't really supposed to sign the get. The husband didn't want him to sign the get. The husband wanted other Eidim to sign the get, but not the Sefer finished writing the get, and the husband said, the Sefer that is writes the get, and the Sefer says, I'm going to sign it also. And, as we'll see soon in the Gemara, the concern over here is, they didn't stop the Sefer from signing the get because they're sort of embarrassed to tell the Sefer, we don't trust you to sign the get. The husband doesn't want you to sign the get. So therefore, you see the signature of the Sefer, there's a possibility that he signed it without ever being told to sign it. Now, so therefore, Rabbi Yirmiyah came and said that this Mishnah follows Rabbi Yossi. So what do you gain if you follow Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yossi says the halacha, there's no such a thing as signing a get without being told to do so. If he wrote the get, he must have been told to write the get. If he's signing the get, he must have been told to sign the get. If he was not told, he knows he can't sign the get. Okay, so therefore, when we see the signature of the Sefer, we know that the husband told him to write the get. So the Gemara asks, "But Navi if you're going to say that Rabbi Yossi does agree, there is a scenario where a person could sign a get without being told so directly from the husband, and that is when the husband tells the Eidim, go and appoint someone else to sign for you or to write for you, so then nafik min hachurba. Over here as well, this can be a problem. The Zimne and the Amalu l'shnayim. What happens if the husband tells two people, Imru l'seifer v'yichtayv, give over to the Sefer that he should write a get, and then and then give over to another two people that they should sign the get. So he never said to them, tell the Sefer to sign the get, or mishum kisufa the Sefer, because they're embarrassed to tell the Sefer that we're not trusting you to sign it. Chayshi, they're concerned about this, and they have the Sefer sign the get. And the husband never said to tell the Sefer to sign the get. So there still is a problem when you see the signature of the Sefer that possibly he signed even though he wasn't supposed to sign. So says the Gemara, Elo, so we go back to what we said before, that really Rabbi Yossi holds there's no exception to this. Rabbi Yossi holds that the only way a person can write or sign a get is if he's being told so directly from the husband. So therefore, Elo Machvarte, go back to the best pshat we have to say is, even though it's a doichik, but this is the best pshat we have, Reisha Rab Meir, the beginning of the Mishnah is Rab Meir, the beginning of the Mishnah that says that only when the husband said ksuvu, then they can't give it over to someone else. But if the husband told 3 people to know, they could give it over to someone else, so that's Rab Meir. And the Sefer, and then in the Sefer, where the Sefer says they must tell the husband must tell the Sefer directly, you write the get, and there's no exceptions to that, so the Sefer is Rabbi Yossi. That's the original pshat the Gemara says, and that's what we have so far. Now the Gemara gives another pshat, Ravashi Amar, Ravashi says, no, we could say, Kula Rabbi Yossi. The entire Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. And here, instead of being medayik from the Reisha, the Mishnah says ksuvu. If the husband says ksuvu, so then they can't give it over to a sefer. And we understood from that that's only because the husband said ksuvu. But if the husband would have said tenu, or if the husband would have been speaking to 3 people, so then maybe they could give it over to someone else. The Gemara says, don't be medayik that way. The Mishnah starts off with the case of ksuvu, which is taka the smallest chiddush, but then it's understood from that in all other cases you can't give it over to the sefer to write as well. As Gemara here explains, that Ravashi Amakul Rabbi Yossi. Really, this entire Mishnah is following Rabbi Yossi that you can't give over to anyone else to write it. Only the one that the husband said directly to, he has to write it. Now, the way to understand the Mishnah is, don't be medayik from the Mishnah. The Mishnah is telling you the smallest chiddush in the case where the husband specified ksuva, you write. But then from this you understand that it's the same is true in other cases that the husband says different languages in different scenarios, that it's the same halacha. And the Gemara spells out. Needless to say, if the husband did not tell them tenu that you should give, he just said you write, so then obviously they have to write. Even if all the husband said is he never told them clearly you write, he just said tenu. Even in such a case, they can't give it over to someone else. They can't give it over. Now the truth is, this is true even according to Rab Meir, because if this is not 3 people, Rab Meir agrees that if he tells them tenu, they can't give it over to anyone else. Then weiter, the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yossi, not only if he did not say this to 3 people, so then even Rab Meir would agree that the husband is makpid, he wants them to write, even if he's telling 3 people, give a get. Even in such a case, you still can't give it over to someone else because Rabbi Yossi holds you can never give it over. And not only if the husband did not tell these shluchim, these 3 people here, you tell someone else to write. Even if the husband clearly says to them, you give over to someone else to write, they still can't give it over to anyone else. That's how you have to understand the Reish of the Mishnah, and that's what the Mishnah is finishing off. That the sefer himself has to be told by the husband to write the get. This is Rabbi Yossi's shitta. There's no exceptions to this. So as the Gemara Tanya will say, the Ravashi, we learned like what Ravashi said here, that this chiddush goes so far, even if the husband clearly tells them, give it over to someone else, they still can't, because it says in the Brayso the following lashon, that kosav sefer l'shma. A sefer writes a get, then it's l'shma. And v'chasmu eidim l'shma. And the eidim signed the get l'shma. Afal pisha kasvu v'chasmu, so they wrote it and they signed it, v'nasnu loy, and they gave it back to the husband, v'nasnu loy, and he gave it back, and he the husband gave it to his wife. Harei haget batal, this get is batal. So this is basically the same lashon that it said in our Mishnah. But now here this Brayso adds a few words. Ad sheyishmu'u koiloi, until they hear his voice, sheyayma l'seifik soiva le'edim chasumu. Right, so that lashon did not say in the Mishnah. In our Mishnah it said until he tells the sefer. This Brayso says a different language. Sheyishmu kailai. They have to hear his voice. Sheyayma l'sefer. What do these 2 words sheyishmu kailai mean? So the Gemara explains. Yishmu. The Brayso is using this term yishmu, that they have to hear it from the sefer, from the husband himself. La fuke mimanda omar. That's excluding the opinion that says Moed Rabbi Yossi b'ay memru. That Rabbi Yossi agrees that if the husband told the shluchim, you tell someone else, then they could give over to someone else. So therefore the Brayso spells out, no, yishmu. They have to hear it directly from the sefer. And then, why does the Brayso use the term koiloi? They have to hear his voice. This excludes from the chiddush that Rav Kahana said in the name of Rav that we learned before in Daf Ayin Aleph, And if you remember, what did Rav say? That when it comes to a cheresh, they can write. Even though they can't speak, but we can rely on writing. So therefore the Braisa says specifically kailoi that it must be dafke his voice itself, not writing. Okay, if a husband says, this is your get im mati, if I die. Or he says, this is your get if I pass away from this sickness. Or this will be your get after I die. So in all of these cases, he has said nothing because there's no get after he passes away. In all of these languages, he's basically saying the get should take effect after I pass away. But what if the husband said, Mehayoim im mati? If he says, I'm giving you the get that it should be a get from today if I die. Or he says, Me'achsha from now im mati, if I die. Then harez a get. In these cases, then it will be a get, because in such a case, he's basically saying the get should take effect now. And it's just a t'nai, a condition, if I die. But when he dies, it takes effect retroactively from before. Now, what if you use the following expression?
What's wrong with the first one, if I die?
There's no get after a person passes away. There's no husband, so there's no get. Now, if the person said, Mehayayim ula achamisa, I'm giving you the get from today, and then he says, ula achamisa, after I die. So here, in this kind of expression that he said, it's not clear what he means. So therefore, get, veina get. Here there's a suffix, whether it's a get or it's not a get. So as Rashi explains, because it's not clear, is he saying mehayoim ulacha misa, so the lacha misa is just a condition? Or maybe he's basically retracting. He starts off saying, this will be your get today. And then he sort of switches his mind and says, no, ulacha misa, only after misa. So in this lashon, it's a suffix, and therefore, what's the halacha if he passes away and he had no children? So on one hand, you can't do yibum because possibly it was a get. On the other hand, she's not free to get married to whoever she wants because maybe it was no get, and so therefore she needs chalitza. What happens if a person says, this is your get from today if I pass away? So with this language, the get is good because it's just a condition and the get is retroactively good. And he said, he specified and said, if I die from this sickness now. What happened? This person got up, and after the sickness, he recovered, and he was walking around in the street, but then he fell ill again, and he passed away. So now he ended up passing away, but it's not clear whether he passed away from that original illness or not. So now we have to estimate and see. If we know that he passed away from the original illness, so then it is a get. Because he said, but if he recovered from that illness, but he passed away then from a different illness, then it will not be a get. The condition was not fulfilled. Okay, so the Gemara asks over here from what it said in the Mishnah, Alma, what do we see from the beginning of the Mishnah? That if a person says, Im mati, if I die, right in the beginning, the first case of the Mishnah, Ze gitech im mati. What does that mean? Kilacha misadami. Mehayoim im mati, if a person says, I'm giving you the get from today, if I die, or me'achshav im mati, from now, if I die. So what did it say in the Mishnah? That the get is for sure get. We say that it's just a condition and retroactively she's divorced. So Alma, from here I see, what does the term im mati mean? So la'af k'la chamisa. It's not like la chamisa. So Rashi explains what the Gemara is really asking is, why wouldn't I say, when the person said hayoim im mati, that he used two expressions here which are sort of a contradiction. He starts off saying mehayoim, that he wants to get to take effect now. And then he finishes off saying im mati. So im mati, we understand already from the Reisha, means only after I pass away. So why should the halacha here in this case not be like what it says later on in the Mishnah, when a person says mehayoim, and then he adds ula achamisa, so over there we have a suffix about this. So why when a person says mehayoim im mati, do we say for sure it's a get? We should have the same suffix over here, that he used one term to say that the get is a get from before, and another term that says that the get is a get only from later after he passes away. Abaye answers, im mati is different than the lashon of ula achamisa. Ula achamisa definitely means after he passes away, but im mati is not clear. Shtei l'shaynis mashma. Im mati could mean one of two things. Mashma k'meyachshav. These words im mati, even before the mehayim, just the words im mati could mean that he's saying that the get should be a get from now if I pass away, meaning it's going to be a get retroactively. But umashma kalacha misa. But it could also mean if I die, that it should only be a get then and not retroactively. So therefore, because these words imati can mean one of two things, so therefore the Mishnah is saying, Amala mehayayim, if he spelled out and said the word mehayayim, so then command Amala meyachshav dami. Then we understand that the words imati means that if I pass away, it should be already a get from now, from the beginning. But lo yama mehayayim, if he did not say the word mehayayim, then command Amala la'acha misa dami. So then the words imati does mean only after I pass away, and it's no get at all. Talk to Gemara, what did it say in the Mishnah? Gittin imati. So again, going back to the first case of the Mishnah, a person says, this is your get if I pass away, lo yamaklo. He said nothing. So now in this, Amar Rav Huna said, v'choyletzes. If the husband passes away, so then we're not so sure that this wasn't a get. She won't be able to get yibum. It's only, she could only have chalitza. So basically Rav Huna is saying that there's a suffix about this, whether it's a get or not. Frag the Gemara, but v'lo yamaklum katoni. We just learned it. We just explained this in the Mishnah. It clearly said, and loy oma klum, that in such a case, if you just say im mati, it means that the get only takes effect after he dies, and there's no get at all. So Hazravun is saying that maybe there's a getter. So the Gemara says, loy oma klum. You know what a loy oma klum in the Mishnah means? Da asira la'alma. Loy oma klum means it doesn't have the effect to be mat to her, to go get married to whoever she wants, if she had no children, and there would be a mitzvah over here, so le'oma klum to be mat to her completely. But uliyavam nami asira. But at the same time, though, we're not going to say that it's not a get at all that she's going to be able to get married to the yavam. She's still going to be usher to get married to the yavam. You must have chalitza. That's what our Mishnah means. But the Gemara asks on this, that can't be the pshat in our Mishnah when it says liyama klum. Why? Because v'amid seif, when it comes to the next case later in the Mishnah, what does it say there? When a person said mehayayim ula'acha misa, so there the Mishnah said there's a suffix what he meant. So there the Mishnah used the expression and said choyletzes, that you have only chalitza because of the suffix. So meklal, from this I understand the reisha yivumi navim yavna. So in the reisha of the Mishnah, it says that it's liyama klum, that there's no get at all, and therefore there's yivum as well. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Masnisin karabanan. Our Mishnah is following the opinion of Rabbanan. V'Rav Huna, the Amar karav Yaisi. Rav Huna is following the opinion of Rav Yaisi. The Amar zmanoi shel shtar mechia chalav. The date in the shtar itself proves that he means to say that the get should be from now. Okay, so Rashi brings that the source of this machlekes of Rabbanan and Rav Yaisi is in the Gemara and Baba Basra. There it actually talks about money matters. When a person tells someone, I'm giving you this property here as a gift after I pass away. What did he mean to say? Did he mean to say that he's only giving it as a gift after he passes away? Right, so therefore, it's it's not a gift now at all. Or no, he was saying that he's giving the gift now. Elamai, he's telling the person, until I pass away, I'm going to be the one that's going to eat the produce from this field. After I pass away, then you can eat from the produce, but it's really yours from now. So Rabbi Yossi there says that he wrote a date on the shtar. Why is he writing a date on this shtar? He's writing the date because he wants the person to understand that I'm actually giving it to you from now. The same thing over here. Rabbi Yossi holds, even though he said such a clear lashon, Zeg gitech imati. It's only a get if I pass away. But there's a date here on the get. And the date on the get shows that he means that the get should really take effect retroactively from now. Fragt the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi, if Rav Huna is saying his halacha according to Rabbi Yossi's opinion, so that chalitza nami loy tebai. If so, you shouldn't need any chalitza at all. So then it's a perfect get. So in such a case, there's no chalitza, there's no yibum. Why did Rav Huna say that in the reisha of the Mishnah you still need chalitza? If you'll argue and say, maybe Rav Huna was saying this because he has a suffix whether we pass like Rabbi Yossi or not. So therefore he says that you should do chalitza. But did he have a suffix whether the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi or not? We know that with the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi because Rabbi Baravu cholash. Rabbi Baravu became ill. So Ulegabe, Rav Huna and Rav Nachman, both Rav Huna and Rav Nachman went to visit him. Amalei Rav Huna Rav Nachman, so Rav Huna tells Rav Nachman, Boyemine, mi Rabbi Baravua, ask Rabbi Baravua, halacha ka Rabbi Yossi, or ein halacha? Do we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, or do we not paskin like Rabbi Yossi? Amalei, so Rav Nachman tells Rav Huna, time of the Rabbi Yossi lo yadayna. I have no clue what's the basis of Rabbi Yossi's opinion. When a person says im mati, why should we say that it's chal from before? So I don't even understand what he's saying. Halachi boyemine. I'm going to ask him if the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Amalei, so Rav Huna tells him, ad boyemine halacha. You ask if the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi or not. The time of the Rabbi Yosi. Now the reason of what Rabbi Yosi says, I'll explain you afterwards the reason of Rabbi Yosi. So Rav Nachman asks Rabbi Baravuna whether the halach is like Rabbi Yosi or not. Amaleni told him, Achi Amar Rav, this is what Rav said, halachic Rabbi Yosi, that we pass like Rabbi Yosi. And then Labasa the Nafak, after they left Rabbi Baravua, Amalei, Rav Huna tells Rav Nachman, Hainu time of the Rabbi Yosi, the Kasava, as we said before, Rabbi Yosi holds, Zman Shel Shtar Mechiyach Halav. The date on the star itself proves that he wants it to take effect from now. So we see here clearly that Rav Huna has no suffix about this. The halacha is definitely like Rabbi Yosi. So why in our Mishnah does he say that you would still need chalitza? Says the Gemara, Ella, maybe we could say as follows. Misapkele, the suffix of Rav Huna is I Rabbi Yosi balpeh iloi. Did Rabbi Yosi say is halacha, even if the condition that the husband is making here, when he says im mati, it was just verbal, it wasn't written into the get. So Rashi explains that maybe when Rabbi Yosi said that the get has a date, and therefore that's a proof that he wanted it to take effect from now, that's if you have the get of the date in the get, and then right near that date, right there on the get itself, you're writing this condition. So then it's understood that he wants the get to take effect from now. But over here, maybe when it's a verbal condition, there Rabbi Yosi holds that the verbal condition is changing from what it says in the get, and it only takes effect later. So says the Gemara, but no, umi misapkele, does he have a suffix? Whether Rabbi Yosi said his opinion even by a verbal condition. But we learned in the Mishnah later, person says, this is your get. And he makes a condition, if I don't come back within 12 months. And he died within 12 months. So then, ain't a get. It's not going to be a get, because the get only takes effect after 12 months, and he died before, so there's no get after he dies. That's the Mishnah. But Navatani Allah, on that Mishnah we learned, Rabbi Seinu hitirua lihinase, that our Rebbes did allow her to go and get married. There's no need for chalitza, no need for yibum. She can go and get married. It's a good get. Now, Vamnina, Man Rabbi Seinu, who are these Rebbes? Amar Rav Yudah Amar Shmuel, Beidine the Sharu Milcha. This was the same Mishcha, that is, this was the same Bezdin that allowed the Mishcha's oil. There was a Gzeira that you shouldn't be able to eat oil from a goy, just like Yayim from a goy and Lechem, Pasak, they made a similar Gzeira regarding oil, but this Bezdin was matter to eat the oil from a goy. They held it over here, it would be a good get, and they explained, V'savi like Rabbi Yosi. Because they held like Rabbi Yosi, the Omar Zman Shel Shtar Mechiyach Halav. The date in the shtar proves that he really wanted the get to take effect retroactively once the 12 months comes. So then it's really a get from before. So over there, in that case, in that Mishnah, it's a verbal condition, and still we say that according to Rabbi Yosi, the get takes effect from before. So there's no suffix about this. Ella says the Gemara, Rav Huna before that had a suffix, misapkele I halacha Rabbi Yosi balpeh, ayin halacha. This is taka the opinion of Rabbi Yosi, that even by a verbal condition, it takes effect retroactively. But Rav Huna, he held like Rabbi Yosi for sure if it's written b'chsav, if the Tanai is in the get. But if it's a verbal Tanai, over here he has a suffix, if in this case as well, we pass him like Rabbi Yosi or not. But on this, the Gemara also asks, is there any suffix about this? We know that in this case, the halacha is like Rabbi Yosi as well. Because Rav said, if a person says, im mati, this is your get if I die. He uses this term im mati, or he uses another term, visha'ani meis, that I'm dying. Harei get, so then it is a good get. Now, if he said, keshe omus, when I die, ula achamisa, or he uses the term ula achamisa, then ein zaget. Those terms are clearly saying that it's only after he passes away, so therefore then there's no get. So now what do we see over here from what Rav said? So the Gemara explains what case is Rav speaking about. Heichi dami, what was Rav saying over here? If the case over here is that he told her that the get should be a get from today, and then he added imati or shani meis, so that can't be what Rav is saying. V'Rabbanan, it would be going according to the opinion of the Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan said only if he added mei hayayim is it a get from now. Tzricha lemeima. Is Rav saying any chiddush here? This is the halacha that Rabbanan said in our Mishnah. It's obvious. What would Rav be adding here? V'Tanan ma'hayayim mimati arei get. So ve'elo, you must say what was Rav saying. Lav deloy amar lo me'hayayim. He did not say me'hayayim. Rabbi Yosi, and Rav here is paskening like Rabbi Yosi. So Shmamino, what do we see from what Rav said? Halacha Rabbi Yosi, that we pasken like Rabbi Yosi. Rav over here said, without any suffix, that in a case where a person says, without me'ayim, it's a good get. So therefore there's no need not for chalitza and not for yibum. So why was Rav Huna before having a doubt about this and he said, you still need chalitza? So the Gemara answers, L'Rava pshitele, you're right, Rava, to him it was obvious that we pass like Rav Yaisi, but L'Rav Huna misapkele. Can't ask from Rava and Rav Huna. Rav Huna may have still had a doubt about this if we pass in this case like Rav Huna or not. Or the Gemara goes back to the interpretation that we wanted to say before in what Rava said. Really, Rava was not even speaking according to Rav Yaisi's opinion. Rava was saying in a case when the person did use the term mei hayayim v'rabbanan, and it's going according to the Rabbanan. Our question was, if so, that's mamish the beferish halacha of our Mishnah, so what's Rava adding? The answer is, Vahani lishni itzrichale. He is adding certain lashonos that don't say in our Mishnah. She'ani meis, that's not a lashon that was mentioned in the Mishnah. So he's telling you that the words she'ani meis is ki'im mati. It's similar to if he says im mati, dami, and then keshe almost, if a person uses the term keshe almost, kila achamisa dami, then it's similar to the word la achamisa, which mean that he's clearly specifying only after I pass away. So he's adding lashonos that our Mishnah did not say. Okay, now here the Gemara brings another version of what Rav Huna said. There are others that learned the statement of Rav Huna regarding the next case that the Mishnah said. Right, so the very first case of the Mishnah was Zegitech imati, but others learned it that it went on the case afterwards where it said Zegitech la'achamise. So what is the layoma klum? The Mishnah said that if he uses even if he uses the term la'achamisa, zekitech la'achamisa, so the Mishnah said it's nothing, it's not a get at all, because it only takes effect after he passes away. And on this, Amar Rav Huna, l'divrei Rav Yaisi, but according to Rav Yaisi, chayletzes, you still will need to have chalitza, because possibly this get was a get, it's a suffix. So over here, according to this version, besides the fact that it goes in the next case of the Mishnah, over here, Rav Huna spelled out clearly that what he's saying is according to Rav Yaisi. So the Gemara asks on this, Pshita, how could you say that Rav Huna came to say that according to Rabbi Yaisi, you still will need chalitza, but isn't this obvious? We know that this is what Rabbi Yaisi holds. Mid the seif l'rabbanon chayletzes, in the seif of the Mishnah, when you add in that word mehayoim, so now it becomes a suffix. So then, when you say mehayoim ula'achamisa, so in such a case it's a suffix. So according to the Rabbanon, they'll agree that then you need chalitza. So reisha, in the reisha of the Mishnah nami l'Rabbi Yaisi chalitza, so it should be obvious that according to Rabbi Yaisi, even without the mehayoim, so that you should need chalitza. Right, now, the reason is, again, like we said before, Rabbi Yaisi's opinion is the date in the shtar is moichiach, and therefore even without the mehayim. This is a beferish Mishnah in Baba Basra, which brings this machlokes of Rabbi Yaisi and the Rabbanon. So it should be obvious that over here, Rabbi Yaisi as well argues on the reisha of our Mishnah. Now, the emphasis is that this pshita that the Gemara asks here is not so pashut at all. There's a few questions on this. One of the questions in the Gemara is, Rabbi Kivega asks, the Gemara before had a whole discussion when Rabbi Yossi said what he said. The Gemara before had a svara to say that in a case where it was just a verbal tanai, Rabbi Yossi didn't say his halacha that we follow the date in the get. Over here it's a verbal tanai, so maybe this was the chiddush of Rav Huna. So why is the Gemara saying pshita on this? Okay, I didn't see an answer to that question, but the pshita of the Gemara is not such a big pshita. Either way, the Gemara answers that it's that Mao the Taime, the Chiddush of Rav Huna, according to this version here, is as follows. I would think that Rabbi Yossi Baha Kerebi Svirele, that maybe over here, Rabbi Yossi, when it comes to what it says here in the Sefer of our Mishnah, when it says in the Mishnah, when a person said Mehayim Ulacha Mise, maybe in such a case, Rabbi Yossi would hold like Rabbi. The Amma Gittin Aliyahava, that Rabbi says that even when he uses the term Ula Achamisa, Mehayim Ula Achamisa, that it's a good get. The chalitza nami loy taboy, and you wouldn't need chalitza at all. So maybe Rabbi Yossi is arguing not only in the reisha of the Mishnah, where he did not say mehayim, but he's also arguing in the seif of the Mishnah regarding mehayim ula'acha misa, and Rabbi Yossi held that it would be a perfect get. Kamash malon deloy. So therefore, Rav Huna is coming to tell you that no, that in that case he disagrees with Rabbi. The Gemara here is soon going to bring what Rabbi holds, as we'll see. Rabbi, and here the Gemara spells out first that Rabbi Savalak Rabbi Yaisi, Rabbi. Okay, so sorry, let me read this again. Kamash Malon Deloy Rabbi Savalak Rabbi Yaisi. Rabbi, which we're going to quote in a moment, he does not hold like Rabbi Yaisi, and Veloy Rabbi Yaisi Savalak Rabbi. And on the other hand, Rabbi Yaisi does not hold like Rabbi either. Rabbi loy sava like Rabbi Yossi. Where do we see that Rabbi does not hold like Rabbi Yossi? The katani, because in the Mishnah that or in the Brisa that we're going to quote soon, Rabbi uses a term and says kazeh get. Only in this case is it a get. Why did he use this term kazeh get? L'mutter de Rabbi Yossi. He's coming to exclude from what Rabbi Yossi said. This chiddush of Rabbi Yossi that you follow the date on the get, he's excluding from what Rabbi Yossi said. But on the other hand, Rabbi Yossi loy sava like Rabbi. And we also see that Rabbi Yossi did not hold of Rabbi, the Ketani, Kazeget, because there's also another halacha where Rabbi Yossi said this same expression of Kazeget, which is Lamute de Rabbi, which is to exclude what Rabbi said. So here, the Gemara brings, where did Rabbi say this expression of Kazeget, and where did Rabbi Yossi say this expression of Kazeget? Rabbi Mahi, where is this opinion of Rabbi? The Tanya, we learned in the Brisa as follows. Mehayoim ula achamisa. If a person says mehayoim and then he says ula achamisa, get ve'ena get divrei chachamim. So the chachamim say it's not clear what he's saying. On one hand he's saying ma'ayim, on the other hand he's saying la'achamisa. La'achamisa means specifically afterwards. So is he saying that as a condition, or is he saying it as a chazara? So and therefore it's only la'achamisa. So we don't know. Divrei chachamim. But Rabbi says about this case kazeh get. No, when a person says mehayim ula'achamisa, this case is a get. So what is Rabbi coming to say? That dafke, this case over here is a get. He's coming to say this case and not in the halacha of Rabbi Yossi when a person says imati without a mehayim. If he says no mehayim at all, just to rely on the date of the get, that would not be a get. The chiddush of Rabbi is, as long as the person says the word mehayim, even though he said afterwards a lashon of ula achamisa, which could sound like a chazara, it doesn't matter. Rabbi says the mehayim for sure means that it's a get from now, kazeh get. So here, this is the halacha of Rabbi, where he argues with Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi mahi, the Tanan, Rabbi Yossi said the halacha, kisfu utnu get leishti, a person says, write a get for my wife, im loim basim bikan va'ad yud beis chaydish. If I don't come back for 12 months, kasvu b'toich yud beis chaydish. Now the get was written before 12 months. Now, but the actual get was given after 12 months. Ain't a get. So the Tanakama says it's not a get because what he meant with his condition was, he said, kisfutnu, when? Both the writing and the giving should be only after 12 months. But Rabbi Yossi says this is a get. Why? Because as long as the get was given after 12 months, it's okay, even though the get was written before the 12 months. Now, why is Rabbi Yossi using this term kazeh? Why didn't Rabbi Yossi just simply say it's a get? He's using kazeh get. The only place that we have that Rabbi Yossi is coming to exclude is what Rabbi said. That mehayim ula achamise. Rabbi says that in such a case, as long as he said the word mehayim, it's going to be a get, even though he also added la achamise. On that, Rabbi Yossi says no. That once you use the term ula'achamise, then it's going to be a problem. Then there's a suffix, maybe he meant to have charata. So therefore, that was the chiddush before of Rav Huna, that Rav Huna is saying that only in the reisha of the Mishnah, when he has the get and he says, he has the date of the get, and he says ula'achamise, so what is Rabbi Yossi's opinion? That it's a suffix, if chayletzes or not chayletzes. But if you don't say mehayim, and you just say ula'achamise, and if you don't, if it's when it comes afterwards in the seif of the Mishnah, right? When he writes mehayim ula achamise, so over there also chayletzes. Not like Rabbi. What did Rabbi say? As long as you say the word mehayim, it's going to be a get right away. It doesn't matter if you said afterwards ula achamise. Okay, that was a chiddush according to Rav Huna in the second version. Okay, we're going to stop over here for today.